So, it's interesting is how the Father's House started was God spoke to me in front of Marcosi's Jewelers downtown. It was the 41st day of a fast. I was doing a 40-day fast and hadn't eaten yet on the 41st day. And the Lord spoke to me and said, I want you to start a church called the Father's House. And I was just stunned because I didn't believe that I was ever called to pastor a church. I thought I was going to be youth pastor all my life. And I had had a break from youth ministry and thought, well, I guess I'm done with ministry. My business has gone so crazy that my ministry is going to be to employees and customers. And, it's going to be Jesus in the marketplace. So the Lord spoke to me and said, start a church. And so we started a church before Easter Sunday of 98, but didn't really have a name. It really didn't have wasn't really an official church. Vineyard had accepted us, and they were going to launch us as a Vineyard church. And a Foursquare called, and since I had been Foursquare for many years, I had told Vineyard the only reason I wouldn't be Vineyard is if Foursquare changed their mind. Well, they changed their mind. And then I sent Vineyard away and was going to be the Father's House Foursquare Church. We were anointed and sent out, and we had our first service on Easter Sunday, 1998, which in 2 months is 25 years, called the Father's House Church. But that first week, our name was the Father's House Foursquare Church of Oroville. And we hadn't filed for our corporate name yet, and our 501c3 wasn't totally filed yet, but we were going to file as, Father's House Foursquare Church. Well, on Monday after Easter, I got a letter from Foursquare saying, we're sorry, we have to bail on you. So we had nobody, but we'd already officially launched on Easter Sunday, so that was 25 years ago on Easter. So we're going to celebrate 25 years coming up. And so in that vision, reading the bylaws and the system of Vineyard and the system of Foursquare, they're very similar. They run by a government called Episcopal government, which is, in the nutshell, people called of God lead the church. And so that means the congregation doesn't lead the church. The congregation follows the pastors who lead the church. And so the board of directors, the elders, are pastors, ordained people called by God to be pastors in the church. And so we have a board of directors with 6 of us, I think. And thank you, Maria, 6 of us. And they are 5 senior staff and me. And we do the financials. And then we have a business office that writes all the checks and follows all the protocols. We have 2 corporations. One is that corporation called the Father's House Church, and that would be the one that the senior pastors and I are the board of directors. And they are an advisory board, and the senior pastor is the leader of the... There's a word she doesn't want me to use, but it is not a democracy in any way. It is leadership based, and leadership works, and leaders lead, and followers follow leads. Okay, so that's the basic, easy version of the government. Within that government, you can have all kinds of advisory boards. You can have financial advisory boards, mission boards. You can have every kind of board on earth, and we don't have any of them. We have one board and one senior pastor, and when I'm gone, the pastor that takes over this church can't change the Episcopal nature of it, meaning the pastor's in charge, but they can change it to all those advisory boards. They can give them all the power. They're allowed to, you can give all the power you want. Like you'd make all the financial decisions. And they can do that. But they don't. The Father's House is team-oriented. We have a thing called our team. And if you start with the senior pastor and then the 20 senior staff who are pastors, then you have the staff, which are not ordained staff that live mostly here on campus and work full-time here doing the ministry of the church. And then one more layer, team, which is made up of students of the School of Transformation, which is a 3-year school, goes 6 months for the original modules, 6 months for level 2, and then you have to make a 2-year commitment for levels 3 and 4. And they grow to where sometimes they're leading departments, running departments, managing affairs, managing businesses even, and they're trusted very highly as they learn how to be in ministry management and ministry leadership. And so that is a group that might be as many as 70. I haven't counted lately, but we call that team. I hope that's clear. I hope I haven't jumped all over the place with my story of the past, but I hope that's clear in how the leadership levels of the Father's House go. The mission and values of the Father's House Church, the mission is to make disciples that look like Jesus. The value is to show the world Jesus. And our belief is that nobody has ever seen Jesus really in his glorified form and not liked him. What they normally do is they see one of us and they judge him. And they don't like him because of what they've seen in us. And so our goal at the Father's House is to become someone that people can see Jesus in. And so we do that by saying, by the value of, follow me as I follow Christ, and I'll show you the way. I'll help you find out who you are. I'll help you find out who he says he is. And then in the transformation of that, it's called discipleship. Discipleship is not very popular in today's world because so many have done it wrong. So many have done it bad. And here at the Father's House, we like to think we do it very well, and people really do transform. People are transformed and born again. It's one of the reasons we call our school a transformation school. The issue is we all are transforming. I am transforming. And we didn't think it was a cool name because of the series of movies. We thought it was a good name because that's what Jesus does. He transforms us into the image of himself, Jesus. Our spirit and our soul is made into his image. And that's the real mission and value of the Father's House. We do it, sometimes we have to do a lot of time making money because for us to pay for everyone to be here, it takes a lot of money to run this place. And it takes a lot of money. And so since the offerings would never be able to reach the level of finance we need to stay open, we have incredible trust in the Lord. And at the craziest time, someone calls us, and I remember one guy called me something like December 30th and said, if I gave you a yogurt shop, would you take it? If I donated a yogurt shop to you. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, have you ever seen Yeovil? I said, no. Go look at it and call me back. I said, that thing's beautiful. Of course I'll take it. Absolutely we'll take Yeovil. And he gave it to us lock, stock, and barrel on January 1st. We took possession of it. He claimed it on his taxes of the previous year, and we took over. We fixed what was broken and put it, and I think we opened by February 1st. Is that correct? Yeah. And we were open and running, and we've been running since 2013, so that's coming up on 10 years, right? Yeah. Am I right on that date? I think I am. Yeah. And we've been running, and so the finances of the Father's House Church have just been so miraculously taken care of. A local construction company paid all the bills for many, many years, 15 years at least, until that was no longer able to. And we had no idea where we were going to go. What do we do for money now? Why don't we just trust Jesus? And this is the mission statement of the Father's House Church, that we trust Jesus and that we become like him and that we try to make a place where people can see him. And right now we're having a little bit of a revival here. There's a move going on. And people are a little bit uncomfortable by the manifestations that go on in here. And we will never stop the manifestations. But we will never require that you do them either. So we want you to come and seek God, experience God, and see him. And then whatever happens to you happens. What we'd like to teach you how to do is surrender to whatever happens. Oh man, you want me to look like an idiot in front of everybody? I'll look like an idiot in front of everybody. I'll jackhammer. That's what I one time did that for a weekend and a half, I think. I was just like, I'm tired. Yeah. I imagine if God could tell me, he'd say, well, buddy, you've just been a little bit too prideful. People see you as prideful, so I want them to see you as a jerk, as a playing the fool, yeah. So you want to know why that happened? I have no idea. But whatever he wants to do, I'm okay with that. I saw people flopping around on the ground. I would never do that. Of course, I'm there flopping around on the ground within a little while. But if you're afraid of that, it just won't happen to you. I don't think anything's going to happen without your permission. And I think a lot of us want, this is our mission, just to show Jesus and experience God and find out who he is. And I just want to encourage you to go forward with us. We've had some personal prophecies lately, and I'll get into those in a few minutes, but I want to finish the whole structural part, right? Yeah. Salaries. Now, I don't know how many in the room wouldn't know this, but I think you all do, but I'm just going to say it anyway. When God called us to start the church, I was ready. I'm like, right now, we'll close the construction company. But he said no. And so we started the church, and I had no reason to need a salary because I was making gobs of money in building houses. And so we kind of set a tradition and a standard by which Vicki and I would not take a salary. It became so good to us. We liked it so much that we almost made it where we planted our flag is we will never take a salary from the church. I have to tell you, I can at least say this is true. We have no intention of taking a salary from this church, and we have no intention of being paid to pastor, but we also don't control tomorrow. So if it changed, I don't want you to say, but you said you'd never. I won't unless the Lord makes me. And he does sometimes make me do things I say I don't want to do, like pastor a church. And does that make sense? Are you with me on that? So what I'm saying is we have no intention. We literally love it more than you could possibly believe, not taking a salary to pastor a church and to watch God take care of us. We actually now no longer have that construction company. So, it made sense for us to say, hey, why don't we, talk about a salary for the senior pastors? But we just didn't want that. And we have watched, it's ridiculous how we get our money. I am on Social Security now, so I get this little tiny nugget of money, or the government gives me about a fraction of what I need to live after I paid them fortunes for a lifetime. Anyway, I digress. I think I'm turning aside here, aren't I? I'm just going the wrong way quickly, aren't I? Anyway, they don't give me much back of what I paid in, but anyway, I do get that little bit. But other than that, we have to make our own. Sometimes I buy and sell things, and sometimes I just invest, and sometimes there's a lot of avenues by which we live, and a lot of people just give us money. So it's like we don't ask for any, but we live well, and God takes care of us. We live by faith, and we don't know how. I couldn't explain it to you if I wanted to. The pastoral staff, they each get a certain amount, but they all get housing, or if they don't live on campus, they get more. So people live on campus get very little. I'm not going to tell you their business, but they get very little, like very little. When gas went up, a lot of them did not make gas money. And then, so the ones that live off campus make way more because the housing for the people on campus is paid, it's all free to them. Does that make sense? I'm not going to ask you if you have questions because that would just mean I'm communicating poorly. So there are salaries and there are payroll. There's actual payroll. There are a few foreigners who, on their green cards, they had to have payroll. People who live off campus almost all have to have payroll because they have to prove income. But the people who live on campus don't get payroll, they get paid stipends. And so payroll is where they take it out of your check and we have to pay their Social Security and we have to pay their training taxes and their unemployment and all that. So there's a few people like that. And mostly that would be people living off campus and some people from other countries where it's required for us to get them qualified. They have to prove they can take care of themselves in some cases. And so salary is how we do that. but it's still less than you could possibly believe. And they all live well, and it's just marvelous to watch them live by faith and to become more and more and more like Jesus Christ. I think all of them will tell you that they come to us with financial needs, and we start praying, and they are always met. It is just a miracle to behold. You want to see a life where miracles happen every day? The pastors on staff at the Father's House Church live in a miracle life, and it's become so common we no longer call it miraculous. We don't even talk about it. Have you seen a miracle lately? No. You haven't? Well, how are you living on this much? Oh, I am seeing miracles every day. You're right. Just have stuff, just things just come to us. Just things just get paid for. It's miraculous, and we see it every day. The financial condition of the Father's House Church is that we don't save anything. We never have a reserve. We never keep a warehouse. And again, once I'm gone and someone else takes over the church, they have the power to change that. That is not like a hard rock, solid ground philosophy of the church. It's mine. I don't want to have a savings account and stand before God telling him why I couldn't do what he told me to do because I had to save money. So we put everything in play. We use credit cards to a certain level. We almost always are at a level of credit cards that's irresponsible. I mean, I'm just being honest with you, because we have something on the way. And we 2 or 3 times a year zero those out, sometimes more. And we zero them out and start over. And so we are almost always right on the edge. We are almost always leaning off the cliff saying, if God doesn't hold us up, we are going to crash. And we just watch him. And he takes care of us. And I'm pretty sure that, 99.9% of church leaders in America, I know America, maybe not, maybe Canada too, maybe England, I don't know, would totally disagree with the way I do it. And can I just give you a secret, tell you a secret? I would totally disagree with the way I do it. Yeah. I wish I were the master and chief of how we do it, but I just don't feel that I am. I feel that it's my job to follow the Holy Spirit. And he says that we need to put ourselves in a position to trust him. And I'll tell you where we're going and what has been the most miraculous, life-changing thing I've seen. The people being born again. I've been kind of kicked back to my roots these last couple of weeks. There's a movie being produced that's coming out soon about Lonnie Frisbee and the Jesus movement in California. And I met Jesus in the Jesus movement, and I was born again. I mean, I was one guy, and the next day I was someone else. I was. Can I say it? I was F you and get out of my face to I love everybody. I have no idea how that happened. I have no idea how this happened, but it was overnight. And I love the born again, how the Holy Spirit works in us and changes us. I love Jesus. I love living for Jesus. I love being a Christian. And I can tell you that on March 9th, 1970, even on March 10th throughout the whole day, I hated being alive. I hated life. March 11th, I had already finished Revelation, and I was freaking out. This is serious, man. He's real, and this is serious. And if I've heard these stories about scorpions and, bowls of wrath and, blah, blah, blah all my life. But all of a sudden, but that was when I was like, well, maybe he's real, maybe he's not. Maybe the Bible's true, maybe it's not. But then I met him. It's like, oh no, it's real. Amen. He's real. And if that Bible's true, boy, this is serious stuff. And March 11th, I went out and started hitchhiking and telling everybody he's real. I was born again. I was changed. And that's what I love, this life of following Jesus. I love it. And I want other people to know it. And I hear people testify all the time. And then they go back to their vomit. They go back to the hog pens of their past. And I'm like, how could you possibly do that? I know people who've gone as far as ordination even, who go back to sexual immorality, who go back to larceny, stealing as a way of life, lying. And I'm just like, I got to believe what they said. That means they were never with you. That's what the Bible says. If they do that, they were never there. They never made it. It was faking. And I just so desperately want something that's so real that people want to know. See, for me, he was real. I've never backslid a day in my life. I never have. Not since March 10th, 1975. That's the church I want. And when the Lord, in Isabel was just here. And in it, she talked about the book of Acts Church. Well, that's what I've been pursuing all my life. The book of Acts Church. And she said, all this time, the rubber band's been being pulled back. Or not the bowstring has been being pulled back. And they're always saying, not long, not long. Well, the Lord, a day is 1,000 years. I mean, so it's another 1,000 years? That's not long to you, but to me, it's a couple lifetimes, quite a few lifetimes. And so it's like they're always saying that in these prophetic words, not long, not long. But in this one, she said, it's here. The bowstring's back. It's ready to be released. And she basically, in 4 or 5 different places, said it's now. She talked about clouds of glory appearing in this room and not leaving. And yeah, you should look around right now. Does anybody see one hiding somewhere? Yeah, she said it's not something you have to hype. You don't even have to tell anybody about it. Everybody will know. And she said it's now. I've been waiting for this all my life. I believe wholeheartedly that this philosophy of a Christianity that works, just fall in love with Jesus and be in love with him with all you have, with every ounce of your being. Get religion out of your life. Get relationship with Jesus to be the only thing that matters. Put yourself in a position to trust him. I'm sorry about this, but quit being American. Quit being anything but a Jesus person. Quit being black or white or Mexican, or quit being whatever it is you identify as. Quit and start identifying as a Jesus person. I am a Jesus man. Come on in. This holiness movement is coming. Whether you like it or not, holiness is coming. And it's coming whether you can handle people walking around like chickens and bopping and yelling and screaming, or whether you can be in a revival without those things. Can you be in a revival without them? Because if you can't, then they're an idol to you. You follow this? I can be in a revival of any kind. All I want is him. When you come, if I got to jump up and down and scream, I'll jump up and down and scream. If I got to lay down and be quiet, look as though I'm dead, that's in the Bible too. On the day of Pentecost, they said they were drunk. You're drunk. Well, if that's what it looks like, then I'm okay with that too. I won't be talking about being drunk because it's just too much of a hot button issue in our world, but I'll be talking about being filled with the Holy Spirit. And I believe we're there. And I believe that the word from the Lord is that it's a salvation revival, is what Isabel said. I do tend to believe what Isabel says. Of all the people on earth that I give credibility to and listen to, I have said this many times in my classes and maybe even from this pulpit, that Isabel's the one person that when I hear her preach, she agrees with me the most, or I agree with her the most. She believes in salvation by grace, but grace comes through faith. Faith comes through works. She believes all that. It's funny, all the people that don't believe that love Isabel. It's really weird. They champion her, but she could tell them right to their face, salvation comes through grace and that through faith, which faith is demonstrated by works. And they'll just amen, amen, amen. And when she leaves, they don't remember a word of that. It's interesting. I listen so intently to anybody I'm going to let get into my heart. What are they saying? Are they saying that loving Jesus isn't important? Then they don't get a place in my pulpit. Our future is that the only people I will ever hand the microphone to are people that believe that loving Jesus is what Christianity is about. He is real, and he's saying things. Shouldn't we just listen to him and do what he's saying? See, this is the state of the Father's house. It has been for 25 years now. We just listen to Jesus and do what he says. And, we've had more love than we ever deserved. And we've had more hate than we ever deserved. And it really doesn't matter. If the whole world hates you or the whole world, wants to say you're something special, it really doesn't matter. It's, does the Lord move in your heart? Does the Lord move? Do you believe in him? Are you becoming Jesus to the world around you? And that's the state of the union at the Father's House Church. We are being transformed into the image of his Son. How the Bible puts it is we are being conformed into the image of his Son. We are being molded like clay by the master potter to look like Jesus. And not just in appearance. We aren't all going to look like Tab Hunter. If you know who that is. He played Jesus in the greatest story ever told. Are you following me? Come on. Get with me. Huh? About 5 million years ago. He was in a movie 5 million years ago. Katie, do you believe me? Anyway. It was Jeffrey Hunter, you're right. It wasn't Tab Hunter. I just saw Jeffrey Hunter in a movie and thought, there's Jesus. That's right. And I said, I knew it was Jeffrey Hunter. I said Tab. I have no idea why. That's his brother. Anyway. So these are the things I believe. How we operate, how we make decisions, where your money goes. Like last week I took an offering for Pakistan. You guys gave $2,900 in that offering. Now, there was a lot of people here that came to see Isabel, and I think we kind of cleaned them out. I think we got them suckered in, right? So they put a lot in, I think, because that was a big offering for a Sunday night. And $2,900. So what we did was, that bought 10 sewing machines for women in Pakistan who can't feed their families. And so sewing machine, after they've taken these sewing classes, is an income for them. Here's the funny thing. Sewing machine costs $55. Can you buy a sewing machine for $55? It's just crazy. I didn't know that. So we bought 10 sewing machines for them. And then all the families who have been, being a Christian is you are persecuted in that country for being a Christian. And their grocery situation is horrendous. So they were being, if you don't pay your grocery bill, you could actually be beaten to death. And so we paid the grocery bills of quite a few people with that offering. And they were just stunned by the amount we sent them. And it was $2,900, exactly what came in, went out. And so Father's House has two corporations. One is Father's House Church, and I never got to this. The other one is Father's House Restoration Ministries. It is a different board of pastors, but it is still pastors. And they run this organization, this nonprofit corporation that owns the Lord's Gym, Yeovil Yogurts, Restored Boutique, Helping Hands. Anybody know the other one? Is that it? Yeah. Isn't there 5? Ridgeview, but that is now defunct. But nonetheless, and most anything that has to do with business. So there are many corporate rules for churches in California and in America. You can have a Bible bookstore on campus. On the campus of your main meeting center, you can have a bookstore. You can have, you can own a coffee shop on your campus. You can have a thrift store off campus. There's only very few businesses a church can have. And so to be able to do a business-funded mission or ministry, because the missions that we support, I'll tell you in a minute, you have to comply. So we had to have a second nonprofit that is approved to own businesses. And so even our shed selling business has to go under Father's House Restoration Ministries. And it is totally separate. And everything we've devised for our students working in these businesses, working in our properties, working in our children's centers, and all the things we do, food banks, all the things the Father's House Church Corporation does, the volunteers from the school run those things. Everything the Father's House Restoration, the owning of businesses, does is part of the volunteer program. We supply the volunteers for all those businesses as part of their school, which is approved by the Department of Homeland Security, and the whole system of how we use our students for this other nonprofit corporation is all approved as part of their educational curriculum in their visas and their immigration status. We now have status with Homeland Security that if we send somebody in Canada or any other country, except for the ones that are X'd out, they get this letter. They can go to immigration and get in the country with nothing more than the letter. So our approval is the approval for immigration to come to our school. We're an approved school with the United States Homeland Security. Problem is that graduation's next Friday and they have 12 days to get out of here. That is the problem, because they graduate, and if they haven't applied to stay to be on staff, they have to go home and come back, or go home and not come back, whatever. I don't know how that works, but we do have to have them leave within 12 days of graduation. So it was really cool to get people here easy, and a lot of the people you now have seen around the campus, they came here on those student visas, and it made it really sweet. If a husband is coming to our school, the wife and family get in as dependents of the student. And it has just completely changed our ability to reach the world with the gospel and to speak to the world from Mooresville. One of the things the Lord said to me in the street in front of Marcosi's Jewelers on August 10th or 9th, the 10th in 1997, at the end of my 40-day fast, was he said that I want to speak to the world from Mooresville and I want to use the Father's House Church. We have, people. I answered a phone call today from France because I thought it was one of our former students. It wasn't. It was a scammer trying to scam me on Amazon. Who's calling me from France? That must be old David. But it wasn't him. It was a crook. It was a crook. I blessed the crook. He wasn't able to steal from me, but anyway. So I think that I've gone a little bit around a couple times, went back and tried to fix some things. Are there any questions about the Father's house and where we're at? And then I'll finish by going into the future for you.
I think you missed at Father's House Restoration that provides all the. You said that we provide.
So Father's House Restoration Ministries is created to make money for nonprofits. So we support a nonprofit here in town called Caring for Women, monthly, and have for several years anyway. We were approached by a guy who had a school in India teaching first, second, and third grade elementary education to children who have never been allowed to go to school in a ghetto in India. And they had 3 years of education, remedial language, reading, arithmetic, and writing. And he approached me saying he wanted to keep them for 3 more years, but he didn't have the room. And we, the Restoration Ministries, donated the money to build a second story on this building to where these kids could go upstairs for 3 more years. So we first gave the money to build the schoolroom, and then we gave the money for the staff monthly and committed for all these years. Each year, COVID killed all those teachers. Really sad. I'm serious. Thought the school was going to dissolve, but they made it through. Were able to hire more teachers. During that time, we kept giving them the money so they could hire. And so they stockpiled a little bit of money, but they also were starving to death during COVID. So we gave them permission to use that money for something other than teacher salaries. And they got it back together, reopened the school upstairs. So they have 6 years of elementary education now. Now they have kids that graduated from the 6th level and said, we cannot leave. Is there any way? So they stay. And now the room is super crowded because the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders filled the downstairs, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and now the other kids won't leave, and so they got to develop some way to keep them going on. And now they've got kids applying to colleges and universities, and so very soon kids will begin to go to higher education. And the goal is not, I'm not an education freak. I am not. I'm not even for education. I'm actually for these people changing. They are generational poverty. It is beyond your imagination. Little tiny children out there trying to make a penny to 2 pennies a day with recycling and stuff to try to feed their family. And these kids, if they ever make it somewhere with any kind of, like if they learn English at this school, An Indian kid with English can make fortunes in call centers and all kinds of things. They can do all kinds of things. They can talk to the whole world, and they're just really valuable. And so they just become more valuable. So that's one of the missions we do. In Pakistan, we have a church there that's in the middle of a Muslim community. At one time, their ushers had to carry weapons. So because by strength, you carry a stick, people won't attack you. They never intended to shoot anybody. They just carried the weapons, the machine guns, because everyone out there was carrying an AK-47. And so they were in grave danger to hold church services. So they had to show force. Today, that's not the case. They meet in a sewing class. They have a sewing class, like I said, and they meet their church in there. We preach at that church for that ministry every Friday to the pastors they've planted, the pastoral group they've met. I preach once a month in their Sunday morning service, and we support them financially. The Lord's Gym Corporation supports them financially every month, and we have in the past bought them a car, quite a few motorcycles for their pastors to be able to get around in. And when I said, how much is a motorcycle? They said $255, and I was like, are you kidding me? I want to buy 10. If you had 10, would your pastors be able to, get out? Because they can only go preach at a church every 2 or 3 weeks with walking. And so with a motorcycle, they can get around and get these churches that, they can set up the different and get around. And then we bought them, they had a cow, and that cow, whenever it got sick, wouldn't produce milk. So we bought them another cow, and we bought them a bunch of chickens. And they had to have the cows and chickens 4 hours out of town so they wouldn't get stolen from them because they're Christians. So they continued to buy and grow food. They grow vegetables. And when they do a giveaway, it is so magical. All these Christians go into all these poor Muslim families, giving them bags of food. And you should see those Muslim families, because nobody in the Muslim world is doing that for each other. But the Christian community that everybody hates is coming to the people that hate them and bringing them milk from a cow, fresh milk, eggs from their chickens, and vegetables. And you and I, supply that through our volunteering at the Lord's Gym in Yeovil and all the things we do to make money around here. Lights of Hope keeps us alive every year. It's saved us, you guys. I mean, we don't do Lights of Hope for money, but it saved us. We put up $90,000 to put on Lights of Hope, and we have to bring in like 150, 160, and to be able to, make it worth it. And it saves us every year. The mud run saves us every year. It's one of the times when we pay off our credit cards. Gift of Hope is a huge way to get people. You go out and tell them you're buying Christmas presents for kids, and people give money. And it's at the end, right at the end, when you need it the least, someone comes along. This year they gave us massive. It was a $100,000 donation. And, I thought, okay, we're going to be ahead for the first time in the history of the Father's house. But it didn't work out that way. We weren't ahead. But we paid off our credit cards. Anyway, so that's what we do. And we weren't 100,000 behind in credit cards, although it was close this time. But wasn't, you have to buy. Throughout the whole thing, you're buying all that food on credit cards. Everything you're buying is on credit cards. And so it's, all the lights and all the things we do. So then there's a third ministry, and what am I missing? Manila, Philippines. Guy came here from Manila, and he was traveling California. And I'm very leery of these third world country people looking to American pastors to give them money. They will perform, it is a lot of different shenanigans that go on with trying to get American pastors to give money. And America is, and us American pastors, generally, we're very generous to third world countries. And so I scrutinize pretty heavily, and sometimes maybe over-scrutinize. But I brought this couple here so they could see us and we could get to know them. And their passion for these little kids, that their parents are incarcerated, and the kids are allowed to live between the two walls. There's the inner wall of the prison, that's the big wall, and there's the outer wall of the prison. And there's this land strip between the two walls, and they get to live there with no shelter, no food, no care, no nothing. And they got nowhere to go. Their parents are locked up. Their moms, usually it's a single parent mom. So I asked them what they needed, and they started telling me. And I said, well, all we can really do is this. And it was $500 a month, month after month after month. And that ministry just started to grow and grow. And then they said, we got this idea. If we could purify water, Because one of the biggest issues for all poor people in Manila is clean water. And so we went about the idea, and then Father's House Church, the Father's House Church, bought them a water purification system. And it's been, you guys, it's been like 315 families a week come in and change the water jugs out and go home with these big water jugs of fresh drinking water. And the kids every week, 200, 300, and 400 kids a week, they feed them. And then they came and said, we have this idea that how much better we could do if we owned our own rice field. And then next to it, this rice field that's for sale is this big area to grow chickens. And if we could just grow chickens for food, not eggs, but because every week these things are full of chickens. It's like, man, that must be super expensive. They want to grow their own. So if we only could raise this much money, and Father's House Church raised that money, and we gave them the down payment. And then here, I told you the story a few months ago, and I was going to take an offering and just said, hey, think about what you want to do. And 2 people came up to me after church and tried to pay for that land. And so one person got to pay for it, and the other person's waiting for the next blessing. That one person got cheated out of the blessing, and the other one got to give their money. And I'm dead serious. It was that awesome. And the Father's House Church bought that land, and now they are operating a rice. They're growing their first crop of rice. They have their first, what do you call a group of chickens? I mean, it's a big old, a gaggle? I don't know. Is it a gaggle of chickens? I don't know. They got a herd of chickens, if you will, right? Yeah. They got chickens going everywhere. And they got water they're handing out, and they're feeding these kids. So that's the orphan children, but it's spread way past the orphan children. It's way beyond the orphan children. Now it's an outreach to just the poor people of Manila, Philippines. And we, the Father's House, takes care of those 3 ministries plus the one in town. And it's huge. It's a lot of money. And it's astronomical. We can't even afford to do any of it. And because we live on the edge, and we constantly know that our problems we will solve our problems better by being Jesus and letting things multiply, letting it happen miraculously. And so that's our philosophy. Did I clear it up? Any other questions? Any questions? Come on, you got to have questions. I've totally confused you. You got to want clarity. No questions? Everybody's saying, don't ask a question. Don't ask a question. Don't ask a question. So you feel fully informed about how this place works. Yeah, I nailed it. I only went over by. I'm only over by 20 minutes. But there's this one other thing I'd like to say. Okay, who's totally shocked by anything I just told you? Anybody shocked? You're totally shocked? Are you really? What are you shocked about? Tell me. Do tell. Oh, dang it. Yes, Hava.
When did Life Recovery Ministries come into the picture?
2004, Danny Hart moved over from the Foursquare Church because he felt the Lord told him to go be with Steve. Danny and I had gone back a ways. He had been in my worship teams at the Foursquare Church. And then there was a revival that started in Toronto that spread all over the place, and it came here to Oroville. And we started playing at revival churches in the neighboring towns. We'd do the worship for the conferences and stuff. And so Danny was at the Foursquare Church with me where I led all the worship there. And then he came over to the Father's house and said he had a dream to have some guys live in his house with him. And I immediately went and built a house for him and filled it up with guys. And he was overwhelmed. He's in a wheelchair being overwhelmed. Like what happened? What happened? You tell Steve you got an idea, and he just blows you up, So he ended up with 2. Then we had a second house, and Andy Engler from Michigan came and ran that house. And then eventually it was 2 houses with women. Katie came through that. And, we have, and Louis was one of the first guys. And so Life Recovery Ministry grew out of that in 2004. We just immediately started building houses. I was building a lot of houses in 2004, so it wasn't that big a deal to build another one here in Southside to put this, And then, of course, it just continued to expand. And during those years, we expanded fast. And there was that construction company taking care of things. So That's how Life Recovery Ministry started. We were never intended to do that. In fact, when people would when Michael T. at Jordan Crossing would tell me about his ministry, I was unimpressed. I don't want to do that. Right? Yeah, I don't want to do that. They're doing it, thank God. But the Lord had a different plan. And when Danny shared his vision with me, the Lord spoke to me and to put him into ministry and do this. And so we did that. And it's been just the greatest thing we've ever done. I look around the faces in this crowd that wouldn't be here without it. It's amazing. The school, yep. So the School of Transformation we have now, I think we had maybe 4 tries, and we failed it 4 times. And then when I was on a Wednesday night, just like this, I looked over in this area right over here and saw this guy that had come on an outreach sitting with his pretty little blonde wife next to him that I'd never met. And, hey, what are you doing here? What's your name? Jordy. And he said the Lord told him to come here, so he's going to get out of Bethel at this certain month, and he'll be here. So we set up a plan to build, he'll be the next director of the school. And they came, and he was. And he started out just, it was like breaking rocks with a little tiny hammer. And it was just like this big old boulder, and you're just going tink, tink, tink. Big old job in front of him, and they didn't waver. They started with some pretty crazy group of people, and so it continued to change and morph, and his own, he had a lot inside of himself he had to go through. And they luckily they grew quickly, and they developed what we have here today. And that was Stephanie and Stephanie, who's the little blonde wife who's sitting in the front row, and the Jordy who has passed away, and his father and mother and brother went through this school right now. And I think I don't actually believe that someone in heaven can see what we're doing here, but one day he will know. And I think it'll be the greatest thing in his life that they went through his school. And I'm telling you, a whole lot of people in the room, it's the greatest thing in your life that you went through his school. And if you went through Light on Sunday morning that Chloe's running, well, it's his school. Light on Sunday morning is still his school. And Chloe runs it. And it's now her school, but it's, Maria's school. It's everybody takes ownership around here. That's what we do. We take ownership. This is the way the Father's house works. You take ownership. The church belongs to you, but you belong to the church. When Paul the Apostle said he gave some over to be teachers and some to be prophets and some to be pastors, now what they call the fivefold ministry, which I don't agree with at all, but the terminology is, I would never limit to fivefold ministry. I would never limit God to 5. I mean, it's like the millionfold ministry is what it really is. And so what it actually says in that verse is that he gave some over to be. He gave them over to it. A person's identity changes to be. I am a pastor. It's not a job I do. It's who I become. That's each one. Any questions? Because I'm going to let you go, and then you're going to think of those questions. You're going to wish you'd asked them. You can't ask me, no. If you don't ask now, you don't get to ask, especially if I saw your face in the room tonight. Yes, ma'am. What question would you like to ask?
I've only been here like a couple of times, and I'm just curious a little bit about the school. Is it like a daily thing?
Well, there's 6 months in person that starts 2 weeks from now, maybe 3. And it's a full-time school, all through 8 to 5. And then there's another version of it called Light, a School of Transformation Light, which has classes on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock? Okay, why did you say Anyway, it has classes Sunday mornings before church, and it's on they'll announce, and it's an 8-week class, then I think it's 6, and then 4. I don't know, it's 3 modules. And that's an abbreviated version, but to give you a taste of what kind of our discipleship looks like and our passion for Jesus looks like. And I think that everybody that even takes the Light comes out of it saying, that really changed my life. That really changed my world. And if you want to know more, there's a booth out there called it's the visitors booth, and they have all kinds of information, and they can just and most of them have all graduated, so they can tell you exactly what it's about. And this Friday night there's a graduation. You can see everybody changing their levels. It's an excellent thing. Anyway, the other maybe I left this out. You cannot be in you can't. It kind of bums people out, but unless you go through our school of ministry, you can't be a pastor or a leader at the Father's House Church. So, SOT Light graduates, we're developing all levels of leadership for them. They won't be pastors. You have to go through the school to be a pastor, or staff. But you can go through Light, and you can be a leader in the Father's House Church on certain levels and certain things. But we don't promote anyone to leadership that hasn't gone through our schools. We indoctrinate you. I just blew the whole thing, didn't I? All right. I wish I could say I was kidding, but I'm just not. I'm just not kidding. Ga, Vicky. Ga. Don't tell him the truth, Vicky says. Don't tell him the truth. Anyway, all right, no other questions. I'm going to let you go and dismiss you for the night. I don't know what else I missed. I don't even know if this was helpful. Was that all right? I think you're just placating me. Okay, so real quick, by a yay or a nay? Do this again next year? Yay? Yay! How about don't do this again? Nay. You know what? River's the only one. Boom. All right, God bless y'all.
Thanks for watching the Father's House Orville YouTube channel, but don't stop there. We'd love you to subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a live service or a video. Help us spread the message of Jesus by sharing this video with your friends. You can also support the Father's House financially by clicking the Give button. Thanks again for watching today, and we hope to see you again soon.